So what rhymes with Team Fortress 2? That's right, virtual pixels for money does! If you don't believe me, you should ask your English professor. He or she will back me up. Now seriously, jokes aside, unusual hats, the pinnacle of Team Fortress 2 virtual item pride. With them come a variety of effects and particles, and a lot of them are pretty freaking underrated, so we should probably go talk about that. Now, before I begin, I want to clarify that this is simply my personal opinion. This video is meant to spark discussion. Simple as that. So if your favorite effects aren't on a certain place on the list or just not included at all, then please don't feel offended. I want to talk about that. So please leave a comment in the comment section below, and I'd like to spark some discussion with you. On top of that, you're also going to see a bit of overlap with some of the effects that I'm going to present here. Like for example, if I had, not that I would obviously, burning flames and scorching flames, then I'd put it in the same spot. Simply because if I left one out, then I feel like I'd be doing a bit of a disservice. So to keep it easy, I'm just going to put down both effects. And spoiler alert, there are a lot of these sort of twin effects out there. On top of that, I'm also trying to be I guess modest with the effects. I don't want to present effects that are stupid expensive, because there are some stupid expensive unusual effects that are just really underrated, but I feel like if I was just to present them, then I guess they're kind of not underrated because there's some demand in them in the market. So obviously there's that as well. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get on with the video. Honestly, one of the cleanest, nicest, and cheapest effects out there, bubbling comes in at this spot. Now this falls under the category of,
oh my god, I can't see the effect, therefore it's bad.
Okay, I get it though. Unusuals are the perfect thing to shove into people's faces to tell them that you're the star of the pub. However, bubbling is nice in its own way. It's subtle, simple, and looks clean as heck with white paint. It is easily one of the most charming effects in the game. Heck, if we had a 9.5, I'd also throw in Cauldron Bubbles. Cauldron Bubbles is kind of like an enhanced version of bubbling with more color, detail, and a little bit of mist. It was actually one of the first Halloween effects to drop and is to this day incredibly underrated. Green confetti and purple confetti are usually seen as great combo effects, especially with the energy effects or the flame effects. However, on its own, you could still be the life of the party with all your virtual confetti glory. These effects definitely still fall into the same category as bubbling, with the lack of visual appeal and flashiness. However, it is honestly one of my favorite effects for its simple nature and because it's super clean. Just all the little confetti particles going all around your body instead of just encompassing your head is pretty dang unique for an unusual effect. On top of that, it is first gen, so the prices are usually relatively stable. A solid pick indeed. Next up is memory leaked and overclocked. These were basically the low tiers of the robo unusual effects, and honestly, I actually really dig these guys. I know that some people really hate orbiting effects, and I personally like orbiting effects, but I also personally enjoy these a lot, especially as someone who grew up playing Game Boy and older video game consoles. The little pixels really remind me of that, and I bet you could make a really unique sort of retro game feel and look with something like the Beatman for Engineer. I don't know, just throwing out ideas right there. So I feel that if I don't put these next two in, I will probably be hunted down by the underground society of gamers who appreciate underrated Team Fortress 2 unusual effects. And of course, I'm talking about Terawatt and Kilowatt. So people think multiple things when they see these effects. I know that newer players tend to really like these effects, while older players are honestly not the biggest fans of them. Specifically, well, mainly because of their overabundance. With the right hats, I honestly kind of dig these effects. They aren't too flashy, but they're also not too subtle, and you can make a lot of cool sets work, and they're pretty respectable looking effects. Aside from them being 3rd gen and typically having prices that could jump up and down because of their overabundance, I actually think these effects are pretty alright with me. I really love orbiting fire. Maybe it was because of the first unusual effect that I owned that I really worked my butt off trading up to, or maybe it's because it's a discounted version of burning flames. I don't know. It's just so clean and works with basically everything. And I know I've been saying that phrase a lot for these past unusual effects, but honestly, all these effects are. But back to orbiting flames, there really isn't much to say, except that people really talk this one down, and I don't know why. It's so nice and relatively cheap. And I might as well throw in a number 5.5 being eerie orbiting fire. If you're more into a bluish sort of purplish color, then this one is definitely for you. It's also pretty disliked, so deals on this effect are not too hard to come by. So yeah, get these effects, they're really nice. Okay, so the rivalry between circling TF logo and circling peace sign is pretty apparent, with most people preferring TF logo and most people also leaving circling peace sign in the dust. However, I have to give this spot to circling peace sign. It is basically one of my favorite all-time unusual effects. Now don't get me wrong, I love TF logo, it's also one of my favorite effects. And a lot of what I'm going to say about circling peace sign can also be applied to TF logo, but I just feel that TF logo definitely gets more love and attention, so we're going to give this spot to circling peace sign. Circling peace sign is flashy without being flashy, and it's also simple without being too simple. You know, if I was to think of a balance between these two things, and if that balance sort of had an image tied to it, it would definitely be circling peace sign. The biggest thing is that I don't really see this effect in game all that often. I know, it's kind of a shame actually. However, I definitely want to give it some love, and it's definitely earned it. So here's to one of my favorite Team Fortress 2 effects. So when I saw these effects, I kind of thought to myself, oh wow, these are probably going to be at least a mid-tier level effect. I can definitely see these being maybe sort of a mid to high tier. But no, Starstorm Slumber and Insomnia are incredibly underrated and actually have a price range that, well, at least initially was pretty dang low. You can get some of these for really cheap for the same reasons as most 3rd gen unusuals, that being their overabundance. That means that you can get this sexy effect for not too bad of a bargain. As a personal fan of astronomy and space, I really dig these effects, and I hope to own a sort of signature hat with one of these effects some point in the future. And I guess you can also lump Ghastly Ghosts and Haunted Phantasm in there as well, as they're really similar except they're ghosts, but I'll leave that bit to you. Now, I would rank this probably at number 1, but the only thing that's kind of holding me back is the fact that these effects are actually starting to go up in price now, and people are starting to really appreciate them. But they're still kind of underrated, and I figured I put it in at a respectable spot of number 4. Alright, finally an effect without a counterpart. Yes, this is going to come in as a bit of a surprise, but I think that Molten Mallard definitely deserves this spot. And before you guys start typing away about how ugly this effect is, let me assure you that I really like this effect for mainly one reason. It's so freaking stupid. It is literally a scorched rubber duck circling around your head. It doesn't get more gimmicky than that. And honestly, it is probably one of the funniest unusual effects, and I kind of wish Valve went ahead and added more silly effects. It's pretty underrated because its sister effects are literally quite heavenly. However, I like the silliness of this effect and the jocular mood it sets, so I'm going to give it a pretty awesome spot right here at number 3. So when I first started playing Team Fortress 2, there were only 1st gen unusuals, and the 1st generation of Halloween unusuals on top of that. Now, Searing Plasma was always a really popular effect that I would see. However, nowadays, I virtually never see this effect, and while I personally do prefer my boy Vivid Plasma, I can't deny that Searing Plasma is probably one of the coolest underrated effects in the game. It does fall under the, oh, it's not as flashy as blah 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 category, but I honestly just really enjoy it. It's nostalgic for me and also looks super hot with black and white paint. On top of that, it's also a really good combo unusual, but not a lot of people know that, so let's keep that between you and me. Definitely not a bad choice of effect. Alright, so honorable mentions. So first of all, I'd figure that I throw this one in, and while I talked about two effects earlier that are very similar to it, I honestly want to give it its own love. Of course, I'm talking about Flaming Lantern. Flaming Lantern is one of those effects that is just so clean, but was overshadowed by some astronomical sister effects. Flaming Lantern is also one of the cheaper old school Halloween effects. I can see this effect skyrocketing in price someday. On top of the rarity, it's also flashy as hell. The giant flaming lantern circling around your head dramatically gives such a rambunctious and energetic vibe compared to just orbiting fire. Yep, I really adore this effect. For my second honorable mention, I am giving it to Power Surge and Electrostatic. This is basically Terawatt and Kilowatt, but except it's pink versus gold sort of color scheme, and it's orbiting. These are essentially more robo effects that I just felt needed some recognition. Not really much to say other than I really respect these effects. Power Surge is my personal preference, but both are not too shabby at all. And of course, number one has to go to Mass Flies. Mass Flies is just so perfect and beautiful in every single way. It is the most amazing effect out there. And if you disagree with me, then your mom's a piece of... I'm probably going to get some people telling me, oh, but these effects aren't underrated at all. And I can actually kind of see that. However, since I don't really see these effects too much in game anymore, and since I believe that these are some of the best effects in the game, also on top of that, there's that nostalgic factor, I'm just gonna put them in anyway. Of course, I'm talking about Stormy Storm and Blizzardy Storm. These effects, in my opinion, are the definition of insane. They work on anything and look high tier while also being one of the cheapest unusual effects in the game. On top of that, they're really stable in price and are over 8 years old. So if you want to rock a sick old school loadout without breaking the bank, and if you want to look as fresh as me with the ladies, then these effects are for you. Thank you so much for watching. Now, I know that there are definitely some effects that you guys would prefer to see in this list, and as I said before, this video was made to spark conversation. So please tell me in the comments below of what you would like to see in a list of underrated effects. Make sure to leave a like as well, because it helps me grow this channel tremendously. Anyways, thanks so much for all the countless amount of support, and I'll see you guys in the next video.